especially when you're outside. What up? Just because he said no, I'll make an exception and talk. What's good, Bacon?
Oh God.
You're coming up with the example where you have within the same room, the air being denser on one side of the object compared to the other side. I don't get it.
Yeah. So if density buoyancy was the explanation, right? Like even, especially when you're outside and the wind blows, the air pressure changes. Even when you're inside in a building, the air pressure is not the same value all around you, right? Air molecules interact, be it van der Waals interactions or ion dipole interactions, dipole interactions, however they interact. And thus there'll be momentary fluctuations in the concentration of air molecules in different areas of the room. So say you have an object sitting there on the ground. Well, we're just going to make an arbitrary unit for the density. And we'll say to the left of it, there's 5 units of this arbitrary unit of density. And to the right of it, there's some interactions. And for a few seconds, there's only 2 or 3 units of this arbitrary unit of density. Why does the object not move to the right, trying to achieve the lowest point of density? Like, why is there not an acceleration on the object because we have this lower density to the right of it now, right? If
I
that
think it
was
would
the
be.
explanation, if buoyancy density was the explanation for the gravitational acceleration, then you would be seeing that constantly, because the room, the outside, the air, the concentration of air molecules is never equivalent from one point to the other.
But wouldn't you have to
I
have
don't.
such a wouldn't your differential need to be so great that the pressure applied would be enough to move the object to begin with?
Yeah. So you have like a feather on the ground. You can have changes in the air pressure that they'd be well above the amount needed to feel, if this was the actual mechanism for the feather to feel forced to start moving that direction. But that doesn't
But
happen because that's not
I
the
think it does.
mechanism.
I think I think the scenario where you create like you have air on one side of the object with different pressure than the other side. I think that would cause the object to move in the direction of the.
This happens constantly, Bacon, right? We should be seeing this constantly because the concentration of air molecules, which is a factor that directly is tied to the density, is always fluctuating. It's never the same from one point to the other. So you'll definitely have regions that are large enough for light objects in a room. So not wind that would move the object, just molecular interactions that would cause the density to drop and the object to move in that direction. But you don't see feathers just moving to the right randomly, right? It's always wind has to do that, or someone has to move it, right? It's not molecular interactions that cause density fluctuations in the air don't cause objects to move, which they would if buoyancy or density was the case.
That's what causes the wind to begin with. The difference in pressure is what causes the wind in the first place. So
and vice versa.
But that's on a much larger scale. We're talking about small scale molecular interactions, not large atmospheric scale interactions.
Sure. So on that small scale, the inertia of the object as it's at rest, you need to have a differential in that pressure that is great enough, right? It creates enough force to be able to move that. You say it's present all the time, but if it was present, the force was great enough in between the differential, then you would see movement. So I'm confused at what you're trying to say.
No, you don't.
Can I bring a counter
Gravitational
example?
acceleration is always down towards the center of the Earth, and that is much larger of a force in Newtonian sense than these little density fluctuations. But these density fluctuations would be large enough if there was no vector towards the center of the Earth that was a certain magnitude that's always constant for the most part, right? These density fluctuations would be large enough to force objects to small light objects to move constantly. But we don't see this. When you're sitting in your room with no fan on, no window open, the door shut, nothing blowing the air around, everything is just still. You put a feather on the ground, it doesn't just move constantly around the room. Bacon seems to think that it does, but I've never seen that.
No, that's a bit of straw man. Like, okay, let me just give you a counterexample. You know that when they put like two balloons inside of a car, one is denser than air, the other is lighter than air. When they accelerate, the lighter moves forward, right? What is pushing the lighter balloon forward? Isn't that the pressure difference created by accelerating
Yeah,
the car?
but that's a much larger fluctuation,
Right.
right? I'm talking
So
about
you're talking about fluctuations that are just not strong enough.
intermolecular interactions that cause little fluctuations right in the immediate region of where the object is. For very light objects like feathers, these intermolecular interactions can be large enough that the magnitude of them would be enough to move the object if it wasn't for the vector that's much larger than these little intermolecular interactions that's pointing towards the center of the earth, keeping the object still. When you're in a car, that's a huge fluctuation of a bunch of air, right? I'm talking about little tiny intermolecular fluctuations.
And at the same time, you're saying that that should be strong enough to beat the friction between the feather and the ground?
Yes, so you had like hardwood and not carpet. You could have these little intermolecular fluctuations right in the immediate vicinity, like infinitesimal vicinity of the object, that would be large enough to move it. They could build up to be large enough to move the object. But the vector towards the center of the earth is much larger than these can ever be. And that's why the object doesn't move. Along with, if you had like carpet, then friction is also a factor too. Like a feather isn't going to be able to skip across the carpet, but across like hardwood, a really smooth surface, it certainly would be.
Well, that's not making sense to me because we are talking about that difference in density horizontally, right? Like to the side. And the vector
Yes.
that points to Earth, I think you're referring to gravity,
No,
that's
no,
vertical.
we're removing that vector because density and buoyancy is the explanation, right? So now we have a 5 unit density to the left and a 1 or 2 unit density to the right, right? So now the object wants to move according to this explanation to the lowest density point. So it should move to the right to get to below the lowest density, right? Because there's like a density dipole, basically, where on the left of it, there's 5 units, and on the right, there's 2 units instead of five.
Yeah, but there's still a difference in density of the air vertically, right? Even if we're excluding gravity,
No, it's on the floor. So there's no more. It can't go through the floor. That's just the normal force. We're talking about fluctuations that are above the normal force and thus should cause an acceleration if this was the explanation. Right?
I
There's
think
no
this is
more
getting too
air
confusing for me.
below the object. There's no more air below the object that can be lower in density, right? It's at its lowest point vertically. But horizontally, there's these momentary density dipoles that are constantly occurring due to intermolecular interactions that cause groups of molecules to start grouping together, making one area lower in pressure compared to another area close by, right? So that is directly, the density is directly dependent on that concentration. So you'd have a lower density to the right. The vertical density is not changing. It's at its lowest potential in the horizontal or the vertical case, but the vertical density potential is changing due to these fluctuations, and thus there should be a force that moves the object because it wants to get to the lowest density point. It's not if it's density and buoyancy, it doesn't matter the direction, right? It can be horizontal, it could be vertical, it could be the z-axis. It's not a axis dependent thing. So it would want to move towards the lowest potential in that direction so that it's at its lowest potential on every axis, the x, y, and z. If
I
that
think it
was
would
the
be.
explanation, if buoyancy density was the explanation for the gravitational acceleration, then you would be seeing that constantly, because the room, the outside, the air, the concentration of air molecules is never equivalent from one point to the other.
But wouldn't you
I
have to
I
have
don't.
such a like wouldn't your differential need to be so great that the pressure applied would be enough to move the object to begin with?
Yeah. So you have like a feather on the ground. You can have changes in the air pressure that would be they'd be well above the amount needed to feel, if this was the actual mechanism for the feather to feel forced to start moving that direction. But that doesn't
But
happen because that's not
I
the
think it does.
mechanism.
I think it. I think the scenario where you create like you have air on one side of the object with different uh, uh, pressure than the other side. I think that would cause the object to move in the direction
Well,
of the.
this happens constantly, Bacon, right? We should be seeing this constantly because
Yeah,
the
but
concentration of air molecules, which is a factor that directly is tied to the density, is always fluctuating. It's never the same from one point to the other. So you'll definitely have regions that are large enough for light objects in a room. So not wind that would move the object, just molecular interactions that would cause the density to drop and the object to move in that direction. But you don't see feathers just moving to the right randomly, right? It's always wind has to do that or someone has to move it, right? It's not molecular interactions that cause density fluctuations in the air don't cause objects to move, which they would
but
if buoyancy or density
But
was the case.
that's what causes the wind to begin with. The difference in pressure is what causes the wind in the first place.
and
So
vice
Yeah,
versa.
but that's on a
you're
much
kind of
larger scale. We're talking about small scale
sure.
molecular
So
interactions, not large atmospheric scale interactions.
sure. So on that small scale, it, the inertia of the object as it at rest, you need to have a differential in that pressure that is great enough, right? It creates enough force to be able to move that. You say it's present all the time, but if it was
Yeah, it
present,
would
the
be
force was great
constant.
enough in between the differential, then you would see movement. So I'm confused at what you're trying to say.
No, you
Can I
don't,
can
because
I
the
can I bring a counter
gravitational
example?
acceleration is always down towards the center of the Earth, and that is much larger of a force in Newtonian sense than these little density fluctuations. But these density fluctuations would be large enough if there was no vector towards the center of the Earth that was a certain magnitude that's always constant for the most part, right? These density fluctuations would be large enough to force objects to small light objects to move constantly. But we don't see this. When you're sitting in your room with no fan on, no window open, the door shut, nothing blowing the
Get it?
air around,
Get it?
everything is just still. You put a feather on the ground, it doesn't just move constantly around the room. Bacon seems to think that it does, but I've never seen that.
No, that's a bit of straw man. Like, okay, let me just give you a counter example. You know that when they put like two balloons inside of a car, one is denser than air, the other is lighter than air. When they accelerate, the lighter moves forward, right? What is pushing the lighter balloon forward? Isn't that the pressure difference created by accelerating
Yeah,
the car?
but that's a much larger fluctuation,
Right.
right? I'm talking
So
about
you're talking about fluctuations that are just not strong enough.
intermolecular interactions that cause little fluctuations right in the immediate region of where the object is. For very light objects like feathers, these intermolecular interactions can be large enough that the magnitude of them would be enough to move the object if it wasn't for the vector that's much larger than these little intermolecular interactions that's pointing towards the center of the earth, keeping the object still. When you're in a car, that's a huge fluctuation of a bunch of air, right? I'm talking about little tiny intermolecular fluctuations.
And at the same time, you're saying that that should be strong enough to beat the friction between the feather and the ground?
Yes, so you had like hardwood and not carpet. You could have these little intermolecular fluctuations right in the immediate vicinity, like infinitesimal vicinity of the object, that would be large enough to move it. They could build up to be large enough to move the object. But the vector towards the center of the Earth is much larger than these can ever be, and that's why the object doesn't move. Along with if you had like carpet, then friction is also a factor too. Like a feather isn't going to be able to skip across a carpet, but across like hardwood, a really smooth surface, it certainly would be.
But that's not making sense to me because we are talking about that difference in density horizontally, right? Like to the side. And the vector
Yes.
that points to Earth, I think you're referring to gravity,
No,
that's
no,
vertical.
we're removing that vector because density and buoyancy is the explanation, right? So now we have a 5 unit density to the left and a 1 or 2 unit density to the right? So now the object wants to move according to this explanation to the lowest density point. So it should move to the right to get to below the lowest density, right? Because there's like a density dipole, basically, where on the left of it, there's 5 units, and on the right, there's 2 units instead of five.
Yeah, but there's still a difference in density of the air vertically, right? Even if we're excluding gravity,
No, it's on the floor. So there's no more. It can't go through the floor. That's just the normal force. We're talking about fluctuations that are above the normal force and thus should cause an acceleration if this was the explanation. Right?
I
There's
think
no
this is
more
getting too
air
confusing for me.
below the object. There's no more air below the object that can be lower in density, right? It's at its lowest point vertically. But horizontally, there's these momentary density dipoles that are constantly occurring due to intermolecular interactions that cause groups of molecules to start grouping together, making one area lower in pressure compared to another area close by, right? So that is directly, the density is directly dependent on that concentration. So you'd have a lower density to the right. The vertical density is not changing. It's at its lowest potential in the horizontal or the vertical case, but the vertical density is potential is changing due to these fluctuations, and thus there should be a force that moves the object because it wants to get to the lowest density point. It's not if it's density and buoyancy, it doesn't matter the direction, right? It could be horizontal, it could be vertical, it could be the z-axis. It's not a axis dependent thing. So it would want to move towards the lowest potential in that direction so that it's at its lowest potential on every axis, the x, y, and z. Right? So Bacon, if you hold the density constant on 2 axes and change it on one, right, it wants to be at the lowest density potential overall. So if you hold the potential constant on two axes and change it on one, it should move along that axis to get to the lowest potential, to return back to the lowest potential. Did I? Am I still here? Are you still here, Bacon?
He might not be able to come to the mic. I mean, I hope he's not necessarily disagreeing with what you're saying, but the explanation of it, right? That you say, well, the explanation here is gravity. Well, gravity is not necessarily an explanation; it's just a measure of the acceleration rate. It's not anything in and of itself, right? When somebody says it's density and buoyancy, certainly density and buoyancy are two different things that we can measure, and we understand the relationship there, right? But what is establishing the density gradient to begin with, right? We can't necessarily say that it's gravity because gravity isn't a thing. There's no explanation of gravity. It's
Yeah,
just a
but we're
placeholder
getting
word that we
right.
use
We're
until
testing
we
one
find the mechanism.
hypothesis at a time. Right, we're removing gravity, right? We could test the gravity, and we can add in gravity and see how the results should change. But right now we're doing a test where gravity, it no longer exists. There's no longer a constant magnitude vector towards the center of the earth, right? The objects move towards the ground because they want to get to the lowest potential and density, is our hypothesis. So if the density the potential density remains constant along two axes and changes along one, then if our hypothesis was correct and the magnitude of the interactions was strong enough to move the object, to overcome the weight force of the object, then the object should move along that axis if our
Yeah, sure, but if
hypothesis
you
was the case.
if you do this in a non-gravitational field, then you would remove the weight to begin with, right? So the idea or concept of weight goes away. So you'd have to do
Well, we're
this
saying density and
essentially,
buoyancy is what
right? So
gives the weight. So along that
sure,
axis, the z-axis, if you
I
want to
wasn't
call it
finished, by the
that.
way.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
just trying to
So
tell you, we haven't removed the weight. We're saying density and buoyancy is what causes the weight, but we're holding the vector on that axis that causes the weight. That's one of the vectors that we're holding constant. So the weight doesn't change.
sure, but you're saying if we remove gravity, that's what you were saying. You can't just
Yes, and
remove
and
gravity from
density
the
and
equation because
buoyancy.
then oh, dude.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah. So if you're removing the density and buoyancy and or gravity in this scenario, you would have to go in a non-gravitational field or something that lacks the density and buoyancy in order to prove this out. If you were in some sort of zero gravity situation and you made a pressure differential change, even very minute, you would see that there would be a movement of that object because, like things in quote unquote space, and the theory that you guys have is you just have to, eject a little gas here or there, right? You just have to have slight movements in order to nudge things in a direction that they will move at a constant rate based on that nudge because of the lack of friction and things like that, zero gravity, all of that. So yeah, you'd have to go into a zero
Or
gravitational
yeah, but
environment
in this
and
instance,
establish.
for
You'd
all
have to go.
intensive purposes, this is a zero gravity situation. The gravity vector is caused by the density buoyancy in our hypothesis, but we're holding that vector. That's one of the two vectors we're holding constant. So the object still has the same weight hypothesized by density buoyancy causing that weight. We're only changing the potential along one axis. So it should, the object nothing's changed about the object other than that one axis potential. It should want to move, it doesn't want to, but it will, nature tends towards the lowest energy state that it can get to. So it would
Correct.
move in that direction to re-obtain the lowest energy state. It still has weight because density buoyancy is the proposed mechanism for the weight in this example. The weight is not changing. That vector is held constant. So it really is akin to like what they do in a zero gravity experiment where you do see the thing move, right? But when you're here on the Earth, you don't see that because that gravity vector hasn't been negated like it has been in those zero gravity situations.
Right, because in the zero gravity situations, typically when you're seeing these movements, you have a change in the pressure, right? And there's no real thing as like a zero gravity situation. Even if you want to talk about something like the ISS, that's not a zero gravity. You're just accelerating around at a specified rate in which you would have the appearance of no gravity, but you're not outside the gravitational field, right?
There's
So
no place in the universe where you
You're
wouldn't
not
be under
getting
the.
it though, right? And those scenarios, right? They're just negating the gravity vector, making it constant zero, right? For our
right,
experiment, we're saying density buoyancy is the thing that causes the weight vector, right? But the object's on the floor. It's already at its constant zero for density buoyancy in the weight vector, right? It's negated. There is no change in that vector. So it's like a zero density buoyancy scenario, but like how they do it with zero gravity. It's the same thing. We're saying if density and buoyancy was the thing that is causing these downward accelerations, right? That's still on for the weight axis. It's just the object is on the floor. There's nowhere lower for it to go. It's already at its zero potential in that scenario. The only thing that's changing is the horizontal axis density buoyancy is changing, and thus there is a force produced from that which should move the object if it was density buoyancy causing that downward acceleration.
yeah, I don't think density and buoyancy is the cause of the acceleration, just like gravity isn't the cause of the acceleration.
Okay, well, for years I've been here in these forums listening to people say density buoyancy is the explanation for gravity and its effects, like the downward acceleration. So I don't know if you don't agree with those people, then that's fine. But there's a lot of them who do say that.
Right, and I think that would be a elementary explanation. Density and buoyancy certainly plays a role in the equation, right? In the same way that when you start to put objects in water and things like that, you're going to have different um, things that take place, right? Density and buoyancy becomes a much more pronounced factor in whether or not something falls and the rate in which it falls or whether it goes up or down. But in the existence of air, which is technically a fluid, you have something else that is taking place that allows for objects um, to have a weight, right? Have a measured weight or measured acceleration. Um,
Yeah, I get what you're saying. All right, if you want to say that there's another effect that leads to the weight vector, well, then sure. I don't know. You'd have to tell me what you think that effect is, and then maybe I can think of
oh yeah, I
some
mean, I have
scenario
ideas
where,
or concepts of it. I think it's an energetic flow. Like I feel as though we live in a energetic stream, and this stream of energy has a downward towards the earth movement, and that is kind of what produces that small force that keeps us on the ground, keeps all objects on the ground that are comprised of any type of quote unquote mass, because mass boiled down to its fundamental level is nothing but energy. So
Well, for anyone who thinks that density buoyancy is the explanation, like you said, you actually gave the example that nails the coffin for them, right? Because it doesn't matter if we zero out and constant the weight vector via zero gravity, or
yeah,
just by having the object on the floor in the zero buoyant density buoyancy situation, right? We can show that when that weight vector is zero, if you change horizontally or along another axis the density or buoyancy, the object will move like they do in these zero gravity experiments. So if you think that it's just density buoyancy, then you should see this effect all the time with these intermolecular changes that happen with the air pressure, even in static rooms, right? So that just kills that idea totally. Now, this thing with the energy, you'd have to make it concrete. What kind of energy is it? How can we measure this energy? What's the value of the energy? How does it change as we move from left to right, up, down, along the z-axis? Right? I'd have to have a lot more information. To right now, it's kind of unfalsifiable. But if you were able to
right.
get
It's
those
exactly,
measurements and provide that information, then we could think of a way to actually test it.
yeah, it's like gravity. It's unfalsifiable because gravity is just a placeholder for what we measure is taking place. Like the measurements are the measurements, right? And when people
No.
throw out the term gravity, they need to have a mechanism. So what is your conception of the mechanism that causes what we call gravity?
Yeah, gravity's not unfalsifiable, right? Like I have this big ass book called Gravitation by Wheeler, Meisner, and a few other people, but they provide predictions using general relativity in one part of the book, and then the last section of the book, it's over 300 or 400 pages or so of just experiments that test those predictions, right? And
Right.
they all fill the gravitational prediction, be it whether they're on the Earth's experiments or whether they're cosmologic experiments, astrophysical experiments, they all match. And it's not just the measurement matches, the mechanism matches. What we should see
What is the
through the
mechanism?
physical process matches for like 400 plus of these experiments in this book, right? And the mechanism has been given to you many times. There's a difference in potential when you have mass couples to the thing that we call space-time, which is like the background that everything occurs on. Mass couples to it, changing
Yeah,
the potential, right? And
yeah,
objects want to move towards the lowest potential, and so they will follow the path that is the lowest potential. And if mass is curving that potential, then they're going to follow that path. And in certain cases, they will come together, which in a simplistic way, some people say that mass attracts mass, but really it's just the larger mass is curving the potential, which leads the smaller mass, the 0 point is in contact with the larger mass, which means they have come together, right? So this is like a basic background of how this stuff works, and it's been
yeah,
measured
yeah,
thousands of
yeah.
times.
So I understand the concept, but still, again, there is no concrete mechanism that you're speaking of, because you're just replacing space time with my conception of the background energy. That's why you call it this background fabric. You can call it whatever you want. It's the same conception. The
Time
measurements are the
fabric.
same. I just think that what you call space time is actual energetic um, fields that are kind of like a lattice work that run counter to one another, right? Like a magnetic and a dielectric. And as you impart these masses that contain energy, right? They're comprised of energy. You have a pooling of that, which does warp that field around it in the same way that a coherent magnet will warp a field around it that gives it what we call a magnetic field. And it's a very similar concept. It's just on a fundamental level of energy. And I think that there is
It's
a
nowhere. It's
movement
not
to that
simple.
energy. What?
It's not similar at all, because ours, we can show that these are tensor objects, spinor objects, bispinors,
Energy,
vector objects,
energy,
scalar
energy,
objects, right?
energy,
They couple to the thing we call space-time, right? And they
which
couple
is an
with
energetic
different
field,
coupling constants.
energy.
Yes, but what are the coupling like what are the details, right? We have the details. You're just
Yeah.
accommodating, right? Saying, oh, it's similar to this, similar to that. We have exact values for
Yeah,
vector
but
coupling constants, scalar coupling constants,
so just
tensor coupling
because you call
constants.
just
We can
hey,
show that these
Jace,
coupling
slow down.
constant, let me finish. We can show that these coupling constants that can be measured directly affect space-time by this value via a prediction. And that should affect the path of an object, right? If you have just a spinor field, you can use the coupling constant to predict how much it should change the energy potential of space-time, and that will correspond to a specific path an object will take, right? So this is all quantitative. It's not similar to this, similar to that. These are all exact values, and then you can do an experiment and see,
Thing.
does the object follow this spinor coupling path or does it
It's
not? And
okay.
it
Are you done?
follows
It's
that
the
path,
same thing, Jace.
confirming
Slow
the
down.
prediction.
You got to take a
It's
breath.
not the
Otherwise,
same
it's not a
thing. You're
conversation. It's a
interrupting
lecture.
me. You're interrupting me. I was not
Mute
done.
yourself, Jace.
It's not the same thing,
Cool. I'll
right?
just
It's
leave. You can
not
just talk to the
similar
room because
to a
you're not having a
magnet,
conversation.
similar to electricity. Yeah, if you're going to keep interrupting me, I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah, well, you're just saying a bunch of boring shit that no one cares about.
I'm sorry science bores you, right? When we can quantify things and use that to make predictions, then perform experiments to see if those predictions come true. I'm sorry if that bores you, but that's how science is done. That's how we figure out if an idea is correct. Not by saying it's similar to magnetic dipoles and electric dipoles and it's similar to this, similar to that. That doesn't get you anywhere. What from what he said can I use to predict anything? Because I can give you the coupling constants, the
Well, I
values
mean,
of
your
how they
whole
couple to
worldview is based
space-time.
on math.
Hang
You
on,
don't even
hang
know
on.
what math is.
I
Can you
can
even
give
define
you,
what math is?
dude, stop interrupting. I can give you the coupling
Okay, answer the
constants.
question.
I can give you the coupling constants, how they couple to space-time. You can work out how that would affect the path of a certain object, and then you can do the experiment and see if the object follows that path or not. Test it. From what he
It's a
said, can you do
calculation. It's
that?
not an experiment.
From similar to this, similar to that, can I predict anything? Can I predict a path something is going to follow? No, it's
You're talking
just
about a
similar to this,
simulation. It's a
similar to
math
that.
simulation. That's not an experiment.
Experiments are not simulation. Seeing the path that something follows is not a simulation. It's a path experiment, a which way experiment.
Okay, so you lost the conversation because you just bulldozed and dominated and you didn't let anyone respond. So I guess I don't know where you want to go from here, but Napalm left because you were just talking over him, constantly monologuing. You wouldn't give any space for him to respond or give his points. So that's
He
lost.
just had to let me finish. If he just let me finish, I would have let him talk. But he was
You
trying
weren't
to come
finishing.
in
You were just
over me.
monologuing.
I was a few words away from finishing when he kept coming in, so that's when I decided
Well,
to
that's
just
an
keep
easy claim to
going.
make when
Like,
you talk
show
for 15 minutes at a
respect.
time, dude.
It's not my fault that these people have no respect. Show respect, and I'll show respect back. It's that simple.
Talk and not let someone else.
Being concise would help.
That's called monologuing, which is not respectful.
It's not
But
monologuing. I'm explaining how a complex part of reality works to someone who is just on a mission to deny it.
You're overly elaborate. It's unnecessary.
Yes, because I have to make it extremely simple and basic. So
But you
that
don't
it's
do
just
that by
basic
being
logic.
over elaborate. You do it by being concise and to the point and short.
and
No,
pass the
because
mic
if
in
I did
between so
that,
people can respond.
all he had to do was just let me finish the last few words I was going to say, right? I didn't pass the mic because he came in. I said, please just let me finish. He kept coming in. So I kept just going over him because that's disrespectful. If he just, I had like 5 words left to say. If he just let me finish those 5 words like we were doing before, I would have let him speak. Like, what the fuck? It's not my fault.
That
He
doesn't
can't be
account for the
respectful.
20,000 you spoke before them, though. That's the problem. The problem isn't how close
If
you
you
were to
want,
done. The problem is you weren't done already long after you should have let somebody else talk.
yes, but if you want me to be concise, right, nobody's going to understand what I'm saying, right? Because
Yeah,
the
we will.
concise version
No,
involves
you're
words and
patronizing us.
no,
You're assuming that
why
we
you're
won't
doing
understand it because you're trying to be
I
elaborate.
want to hear
This is false.
Okay, tell me what a metric tensor is, right? Because that would be a way I can concisely state something. But would anybody know what I'm talking about? What's the Minkowski metric tensor? What are its values?
It sounds like what you're saying isn't of value then. If you can't say it concisely and quickly, then you probably should go take some time, write it down, reword it so that you can do that, so that other people can be part of the conversation. If you don't like that, then maybe you should converse with other people who you think are on your level.
Oh, I do all the time at work, but I come here, right? This is part of, getting information out to the general public. But yeah, when you're talking about these technical words that would make things very concise, no one would know what I'm talking about. So I have to take the 5 technical words and explain them in a way that people can understand what they mean. So really, I'm defining things as I'm explaining, and that's why it becomes a bit long. And then people just get rude and disrespectful.
Here, the rule is, as Gio has pointed out, that you're not allowed to monologue in that way. So you need to either refine the way that you're speaking on this particular venue, change it the way you're saying you're changing it for this venue, change it again because it's not good enough for this venue, or keep that particular stuff somewhere else and come here with something else. Okay? You already
wanted
indicated.
To talk about
Hey, I'm not done yet, buddy. I'm not done yet. You've already indicated you're changing your language and your speech so that you can put it here on this venue in a way that people understand it. Someone, the owner of the server, Gio, has let you know your way of doing it right now is not good enough for this venue. It needs to be different for this venue. So change it again or leave it somewhere else.
All right, well, don't ask me to come in and talk about gravity and density and buoyancy if you don't want me to get to the most technical, most closest to reality version and actually make it understandable for everyone. Don't ask me to talk about those things.
Dude, hold on, man.
It's simple. Nothing about that was monologuing. I was just defining a bunch of technical words so that everybody could understand them and explaining how it corresponded to what we're talking about. It's not a monologue.
Holy shit.
It's pretty straightforward, dude. If you're going to have a back and forth, Napalm was obviously interested in having, it's just like hitting the tennis ball back and forth. Dude, every time I speak in here, I try to keep my statements within about 1 minute. Sometimes I might go a minute and a half or something, but I'm always very conscientious of it because I want to be respectful to the other person to let them respond. So it's just a matter of like a tennis game back and forth. I think it was just, we were interested in hearing the conversation. You got extremely long-winded and forceful, and it's fine, man. It's just how you do things.
Because he wasn't getting it, right? He kept saying, oh, it's similar to what I'm saying, but it's not similar in any way, right? If he was understanding what I was saying, he wouldn't be responding with, oh, it's similar to my what if this, similar to that, could be this, right? He wouldn't be saying those things if he was understanding what I was saying. So I have to change it a little bit to try to see if maybe if I say it in this way, he'll understand it, which I know he's not going to, but maybe some people in the audience or in the general public will.
Well, you would have gotten my attention a lot better if you didn't slow down in response to frustration, because that doesn't really work, right?
Arwen, I've heard many people.
No, but when that happens, everybody's attention span actually shortens and they're getting impatient. So you have to kind of then like skip the story up quickly, concisely put it together and not let it flow as much, but just get to the point, right? And then
People
you don't get too elaborate, right? You don't have to prove how deep your knowledge goes. You just have to get to the point.
It's not
and
proving.
That way, when you,
it was just getting to the most close to reality description that we can get to, right? And I've heard people say these things in very concise ways to you, Arwen, and it's not like you're like, oh my God, how interesting. Oh, I'm going to change my thoughts. I've heard tons of people explain these things to you guys, and that never occurs. So don't act like that's what you were going to do.
I talk about gravity and density all the time. I have done so since like 2016. Regularly, like I've had all the conversations.
Yeah, that's not what
I heard
I said.
all the conversations. Nobody's taken that long. Nobody. People that are very good at it.
I've heard many people explain this to you concisely and pretty accurately and wellly, may I say. And your little, oh, I would have been interested in that kind of act that you were doing before. I've heard many people go through these things with you, and you have never done that. So don't sit here telling me that that's what you were going to do, that you were going to be interested and you were going to take the information in, because I've seen.
Then why are you here?
What the hell are you saying? You're drawing my motivation in doubt. Are you saying that I'm lying? I'm pretending?
I
Want to
already told
backstab?
you
No,
what
dude.
I'm here
I'm
for.
genuinely interested. You seem to have like done a pretty deep research, but you also seem to like to really draw in
Yeah, I
things
work with
that
this
I'm
stuff every day.
recognizing as mathematical models, which is very typical. That's what you deal with, right? And then you basically
Not,
start
what
to
are you talking
declare
about?
how that
Measuring the
is.
paths of things, right? See, that you keep
Yeah, but
saying these
you
wrong
drew in all
things
these
that I've
other
told you like
influences,
many
effects.
times. It's not mathematical models, right? Mathematical models are just the representation of the reality that we work with in a language that we can all understand if you
Yeah,
learn how to
prediction
understand it.
patterns. Yes, prediction patterns. That's what that is.
Yes, but it's
And then
of
because it
reality, right?
works, you
We look
just
at
you
reality
have
and
a
then
standard
we make
assumption
the
that it
model.
is reality then. That's how you treat it. You call it science and then you say, look, this model of prediction is so accurate, this is reality. That's like a declaration that you do.
No, it's the other way around. And I
Really?
just told you that. We look at reality and then we make it right. Every day I'm working with reality. I'm not working with math. The first thing I do is the experiments, the measurements, the observations, right? Then I convert that data into a mathematical model if I need to, if it's applicable for what I'm doing, right? So that it's in a language and a representation of the reality I've measured, observed, taken data of, experimented on, whatever, that everyone else who wants to learn that language can understand. But we start with the reality first, then we make the model based off reality, and we use the model to predict the result of a further question we have, a further experiment that we're going to do. We take the model and we make a prediction for the result, then we do the experiment and see if the result matches the prediction.
Oh, sorry. What? I kind of fell asleep. That was so
Yep,
unbelievably boring,
exactly.
long-winded.
Yeah, you're so honest. You're here for such honest discussion.
No, genuinely, that was I couldn't. It could not have been more elaborate.
Yeah, because you didn't get it when I shortened it the first time. So I had to break down
Right, here you
part
go
of the
again with these
scientific
assumptions. Yeah, because I'm
process
so bored because I
for
didn't
like a
understand it. No,
4-year-old,
I'm
and you
bored because
still
it's
didn't
so
understand it.
unbelievably long-winded. Not because I'm too dumb
And
to
now you're
understand
talking
it.
over me. Now you're talking over me, and I'm the one
Yeah,
getting
you're
muted.
assuming
Well,
that
it
I'm
would be
dumb,
nice
and
if
it's
someone
very
else would talk.
insulting. I hope you
Can
stop
I can I
patronizing
just come
me.
on the stream just to be a grown man who bitches?
Hey, they started the bitching. You left in like a rage of bitching.
What?
Go ahead. You want to
I didn't
talk?
I didn't
Let's
leave
talk.
in a rage. I didn't leave in a rage. And
No,
you're
no,
getting
no.
offended,
I don't
but
want you to talk anymore.
guy said I left in a rage. Like
Yes, you left. I'm still here. I'm still
I
going. If you want
left
to talk
I
about
left a
gravity,
while
let's
ago
talk about
because I had
gravity.
to go grab some stuff from the
Wait, who
grocery
left?
store, fucking retard. I didn't
Yeah,
leave in
that's
a
not what you
rage.
said. Now you're just
Yo,
insulting me.
who is here? Who is here? Who's here that's an actual person?
Everyone was here, dude.
No,
You
not
didn't say
you,
I
not
gotta go get
you. Someone other than
groceries and
you.
I'm
Someone
leaving.
other than you. I was
Let's see
muted.
who's
I
honest.
was muted for like 10 minutes and then I left because I had to go grab some groceries. You fucking idiot.
Okay,
That has
doesn't
nothing to
matter.
do with
Doesn't
rage.
matter. You want to talk
I mean, I'm
about
getting I'm
gravity?
getting kind of enraged right now cuz you're lying, but fuck, I should
Do you
just
want to talk about gravity or not, man? What is wrong with you?
I never was talking about gravity. It's even weirder that you think I was. But
Density,
yeah,
buoyancy, and
sure, we can.
gravity. That's what we were
Yeah,
talking
I
about.
wasn't talking about that. I was listening. I listened intently, and then I left to go grab groceries.
Okay,
But
so
sure, you want to
you
talk about
weren't
gravity?
talking about zero gravity
No, I
experiments,
wasn't.
about
No,
weight
I wasn't.
vectors. Now someone's
I
screaming
think you
over
guys
me.
are confusing people.
That wasn't me, Jayace. You confused
Oh,
fucking idiot. That was someone else.
my bad. Who are you're not
No,
VapeGate psyop? Wasn't that
I
who I
am
was
Jay
talking to?
No.
You were talking to Napalm earlier.
Okay, napalm.
Yeah, there you go. Yo,
My
Rob, dude,
bad. You
you're
kind of
fucking.
sound alike to me.
Yo, Rob, your mic is just. I
I
don't
know,
know.
I'm sorry about my mic.
Like, I like you, Rob, bro, but your mic, I really hate your mic, dude.
All right. Well, I apologize. I thought you were the person I was
Hey,
speaking to. You
it's
sound
all
a
good
bit
then.
like him on my
It's
end.
all good. It's all good. I'm sorry that I was getting enraged, but yeah, we're all good here.
All right,
No, when
cool.
Jays did come in though, you did like roll your eyes and you're like, "Oh no, this guy," and then you missed like 20 of the worst minutes ever. So you won on that one by leaving.
That is also true, Gio.
Yeah. Oh, all
Yeah,
right.
it's great. Like I wasn't gonna talk either, but he said that, and oh man, it sparked it.
Right.
Yeah. Yo, Rob, I will buy you a mic. I will. I literally don't even have a mic, but I'll buy you a mic, dude. Like, do you need it? Just let me know your Amazon account.
No, no,
I'll fund you like
no,
$40 for a mic. I'll literally buy you a mic, buddy.
uh,
This is ridiculous.
no. I listen to it on these shitty Bluetooth headphones. Where I should, when I want to participate, just turn my Bluetooth off and use the phone mic because I sound a lot better now, don't I?
Yeah, you actually sound 100% better and normal. Whereas before,
I
you
know.
sounded like I sounded like you were in Vietnam talking through a radio while getting shot at.
I'm sorry. I buy cheap $20 Bluetooth headsets. That's my problem. I'm gonna
Well,
try my best to turn them off when I want to participate. I'm really sorry, gentlemen.
maybe we could get on a topic of some sort. I don't really want to keep doing the
Thank,
analyzing things, but Jace, I
thank you,
will just
Gio.
say it just seems like maybe your vibe, Jace, is that you want to just tell people how it is, kind of thing. Like you want to just like correct them and tell them what the right thing is and how they're totally wrong. Versus like an actual exchange, like, hey, what are your ideas? Oh, let me share mine. And of course, like, I mean, debate, people do try to say what they think is right. But I'm just saying, like, it's just a little bit of general feedback. It's just your general vibe is like wanting to just tell them what it is, which I know others have that too. Whereas I think it's just not, I think Napalm was interested in actually trying to have some kind of a synthesis, like a discussion about how relativity links in with what he thinks. And it just seemed like you weren't really having that. You just wanted to keep telling him how it is and how his thing is just wrong without letting him actually even
No, I was
bring up
trying
points.
to, right, Gio? I was trying to, right? I was asking him for like the quantitative values of his ideas. How can we test them, right? Like you can't say it's just not right to mislead the public by saying your ideas are similar to relativity, which has been extensively tested, and I use it all the time in my personal work, right? If he can't provide these basic things, like it's about getting the correct information out to the public, right? So I can't let this misleading thing like, oh, this idea that has no quantitative, it's not even defined, we can't make any predictions, like we can't let that uh, be equated to relativity because it just isn't. And I'm here to get proper information out to whoever I'm talking to, the general public, the audience, whoever wants to hear it, right? And
No
it's
practical
always
real
based
work
off
requires
personal
relativity.
experience, right? I don't talk about things I don't have personal experience with without caveating that before I start talking about it, right? So I know that I can demonstrate these things right to these people's faces if they had the gall to come to the lab and do it. Um, and so when they're trying to make these similarities, it's just not proper.
I mean, I can see that, but I can also see the point where, and I've noticed this a long time ago, but yeah, like what you just said, J Ace, is not really even mutually exclusive to what Geo said. If anything, it actually makes sense and would lead to Geo's conclusion. Your, I guess, I don't want to call
Well, I
it
gave him a
worldview because that's
chance.
not what it is. It's like a or not strat. It's not a tactic. It's not strategy. It's your mindset. Your mindset, how you just explained it, makes sense and shoehorns perfectly into other people's perception of you that Gio kind of expressed that I've come to the idea of many months ago.
Yes, and I gave him the chance, right, to tell me and tell us how his ideas were similar to relativity, right? I asked him the relevant questions so that he could provide the information so we could get right down to it. But because he either can't do that or hasn't done it yet, doesn't have that information, he started getting upset, right? That's kind of what happened. Instead of just being honest and just saying like, look, this is just something I believe. I haven't tested it yet. I don't know if it's true. Maybe if it's not very similar to relativity. If he just said that, I would have been like, all right, cool, man, no problem. But he kept with the, oh, it's similar to relativity without being able to provide how it's similar to relativity and got upset about it.
Well, maybe he means a more colloquial approach of relativity, something that we think about it a lot through the examples, and that is that relativity to us is like a point of view. So it comes into being, for example, with the Coriolis effect, where it's a matter of perception of whether you're moving or the thing you're looking at is moving, right? That to us is a relativity concept, right? It might not have anything to do with all the math and all that and the official version of gravity or anything, but within it, within the idea of relativity, that's a thing. It's a perception thing. So maybe he was pointing at that. Right? It's not the,
well, he could have said
the
that,
academic
right? Like
version of it, right? You're clearly very academic oriented. With us, we employ words based on the associated concepts a lot of the time. So we're not rigidly academically trained here. That's not how we work, right? So maybe that.
I know, but do you not see the problem with then sitting here and like making fun of academics, calling them all sorts of names, saying that you know better than them, that the earth is flat, that this thing works that way, right? You're not rigidly academic, as you just admitted. So how do you know more than them if you haven't done the work
Because
to actually know
academics
more?
is not the only thing that's real and that you can learn from. Like we're figuring things out our own way, and we're not going through that specific type of linguistic built system. That's very precise and it's very thought through.
You have to do the work.
And I mean, that is the learned way. We find it out the colloquial way. So we build it out as we go, and we figure it out as we go. And there's the internet now, so it's much easier to figure out.
Arwen, do you understand that academics, they test things, right? We're working in labs, we're out in the field in nature, we're testing how when you do one thing, what happens in reality? What can I show every time happens, right? It's not just, oh, we're academics, so we know how things work. No, we're going out there and physically testing how they work and can show you to your face how they work, right? So if you haven't done that work, if you haven't put in that effort, you shouldn't be saying that you know how things work better than academics do.
The reason is not because we don't do rigidly all the tests. A lot of us actually do that, right? And we can lean on each other for doing that. You don't have to be a person that does everything like with everybody. There's no point to it. You just know how it works, and you lean on other people that do the minutia, right? Not everybody has to do everything.
Well, just real quick, I had to jump in. Hold on real quick. I had to jump in and point out, Jayace, you totally strawmanned the reason that Napalm left. He wasn't upset because he couldn't show demonstrations of how his thing was like your thing, and you were just talking and talking and talking and going on and on and on, and he couldn't get in a word in edgewise, and was trying to say whatever it was he was saying, and it wasn't because he was upset that he couldn't prove what he was trying to say the way you made it sound. Just want to make sure that's clear.
Well, it was, right? Because I gave him the opportunity to provide us with that information. Then I started breaking down more of the details of how that information shows the similarity, right? And that's when he started interrupting me. And then when I kept going, because he kept interrupting me, he got more and more angry. But if he could, right? If
Because he was angry that he couldn't make his point.
Oh my God, dude. If someone's talking on a what I
you're
think is a
doing it.
monologue, can you just let me finish?
No.
If someone is talking
you're
on what
doing it
I
again. You
think
keep
is
doing
a
it.
monologue, but I already know I have the relevant data and information to show that I can answer what they're asking for, I'll just wait for them to finish, and then I will give it to them, right?
He wasn't steamrolling everybody. You don't.
What he was interrupting with was saying that what you were calling it. Well, real quick, Alwyn, I have to go, but I'm just going to say this real quick. He was interrupting you to say everything you were saying was talking about this energy that was the same thing he was talking about, and you're having the result that proves it to you may be a matter of interpretation rather than an actual academic proof of some sort. That's what he was trying to get at. And you're like, no, I've got the proof because my interpretation is correct and yours isn't because I've got academics that are supporting my interpretation. That's what it was, bro.
It's not It's not that I have academics. I have literal real world experience with this stuff.
Of
He
space
can
time?
come to
You've got
my
proof of
lab.
space time?
He can do it with his own hands. And the energy he was talking about was not the same kind of energy that I was talking about. And I was explaining that to him in the interaction.
But you're saying that your interpretation of that energy was not the same as his interpretation of that energy, and you were
There's
talking
no
about space time.
interpretation, dude. He said
But you were
what
talking about
his
space
energy
time, dude.
idea
You think
was.
space time? You think space time is more than just a
Bro,
concept?
bro, hang on. Before we jump to something else, he stated what his energy concept was, right? And I was explaining to him that that is not the same thing as the energy potential that I was talking about in relativity. I was explaining to him how they are not the same thing.
You were calling it basically the same thing when he was pointing out that it was an energy that you were
Fuck, who
describing.
fucking cares, bro? Okay, fucking Napalm wins, fucking Jayace loses, unless Sir Gorbert and Jayace wins. Okay, next fucking subject.
I
Who
just
gives a
didn't like
fuck?
the way he
There's
described.
no
I just didn't like the way he described Napalm left. Napalm left because he couldn't do what he was trying to do, and it was his failure that drove him on.
Jayace is
no
bigger and smarter
winner.
than everyone else, but he's
Oh
also more
God.
of a jackass. Can we leave this and not argue about an argument that is
There's
already
no
over?
winning and losing. There's
I'll
no.
leave you with this.
There's
No, I
no
feel
The
like
topic
winning
was
and
every
losing.
second I listen to you two jackasses
Bullshit.
argue about an argument that's over, I'm losing. I'm losing every time you
There's
two are
no.
arguing about an argument.
Stop
I can
talking, dude.
already fucking talk. Like you can't
Guys,
scream.
Wait, Dave,
guys,
stop for
this
a
is
second.
now
I have to
the
leave.
audio
I
cast.
think you're right, Noah.
Dave,
No, I think
so
you're right. I didn't want to.
I'm
I
losing
wasn't
right
trying to
now
make it
by having
about the
listened to
argument.
this.
Dave,
I'm a
this
loser
is
by listening to
absolute
this.
audio cast. You guys have to go one at a time. Dave, just go one at a time.
I
Wait,
have one more thing to say.
Calatrax, if you're gonna mod this, may I request that when it's their turn to talk, they're not gonna argue about an argument that just happened, is over, and one of the parties of the argument's not even here anymore.
I'm just
Bullshit. I
gonna
just
say,
have one
you guys
thing to
need to go
say.
one at a time.
I want to argue
Yeah,
about
that's
what
me.
you made.
Wait, I just have one thing to say, and I'm leaving. So that's what I just came in to make sure he wasn't mischaracterizing the reason that Napalm left. But the topic was he was saying that he had proof of space time. I'll leave you with that to discuss.
This modding is absurd. This is why no one comes here. But there's no winning or losing.
Nobody?
Right? It's about getting the accurate information, right? And I've offered I have an open invitation. If you think I'm wrong, come to my lab, come to JFK. I'll pick you up. We'll do experiments. You could show me I'm wrong. I'll give you all the instrumentation you need. I will write the proposals to get us money if that's what we need. Right? You could show me straight to my face for free that I am wrong. Open invitation.
Good luck.
So you're not going to address space time then?
I'm just about getting the accurate information out to the general public. If you think it's wrong, you can come show me I'm wrong.
So you're not going to address space time then?
I already did when I was talking to Napalm earlier. Right? It's just there's many ways to think of it. You can think of it as a tensor field. You can think of it as a manifold, as a pseudo manifold, Riemannian manifold, or you just think of it as the object that other objects travel, the background object that other objects travel along. Right? That's the easiest way to think about it.
So it's just a
Go ahead,
thought
you had to
experiment?
interrupt to say that. Go ahead.
Hey, I have a follow-up question.
It's about interrupting, actually. My point is,
You guys even interrupt each other.
Go ahead, Arwen.
I just wanted to know, so by those descriptions, you would agree that it's a thought experiment, all of that?
No, we're talking about what is space-time, right? Because
Yeah.
it's not matter. Matter is a different thing, right? It's not something that I can grab. Like nobody in science is claiming that space-time is something that you can grab and I can like give you a handful
It's a concept.
of it, right? It's a background.
It's a thought experiment.
It's a
I mean,
Riemannian
Einstein
manifold.
said it himself.
You're interrupting me again, man. You just can't
Yeah,
help yourself.
no, I'm trying to have a
It's
conversation
not-
with you.
we're
You
not
only seem
doing-
to be interested in monologuing. Like,
We're
can't
not
you have a
doing
conversation?
we're not doing any thought experiments, are we? We're just talking about what is space-time, right? Some people think of it the easiest way that they can think of it in their head because it's not matter. It's not something that you can grab and like characterize.
But
You have
you
to
keep starting the
abstract
sentence
a
with
little
thinking of
bit.
it, right? So it is a thought experiment by definition.
For
You're declaring
for
it.
how you understand space-time, right? You're not listening because it's not a piece
Oh, I
of
am
matter
listening. I'm
that
listening
you can
very carefully
grab.
to the words that you're using.
Okay, well, I've told you
keeps
we're not
talking.
doing any thought experiments. So can you stop saying that we're doing a thought experiment? Because we're not. I'm just telling you how some people abstract
And
what
think of it,
space-time is in their head, right? They're
Yeah,
not doing a
exactly.
thought experiment. They're just trying to get an understanding in their brain of what space-time is. They're not doing a thought experiment. They're trying to understand what space-time is in a way that they can understand.
Right. And another word for that is thought experiment.
Okay, what is the thought experiment? What are the variables that they're that they're using? What's the control that they're using? What is the test? What instruments are they using in their mind?
They're
to
using
measure
their
these
mind as an
things?
instrument. Yeah, and it's
Instruments
about
in a thought
a
experiment.
consideration.
Come
That's
on,
what they're
Jay.
performing.
That's not
And
a
they're
thought
applying
experiment.
math. and then they're simulating it in their minds. That's called a thought
Like I
experiment.
said, we have different fields in QFT, like bispinner, spinner, vector, scalar, tensor, right? These have coupling constants that we can measure with instruments. Those coupling constants then can measure how they couple to space-time, which gives you a value that you can then use to predict if I have an object, a piece of matter with these characteristics, how will it travel through space-time according to these other things that I've measured. Then I do the experiment. I let that object travel through space or whatever you want to call it, and I see, does it match what relativity says the path should be? Or is there another hypothesis that predicts the path better? Then relativity would be a point of data against relativity, right? That's the thing, right? That's the thing you're not getting, right? We're not doing thought experiments. We're just trying to understand in our brain what space-time is. When you're trying to understand something, are you doing a thought experiment, Arwen?
Yeah. In this case, you are, because you're trying to simulate something mentally, a consideration of what's happening using certain formulas and standards. Yeah, that's the thought experiment.
Okay. Well, all I can do is just repeat why it's not a thought experiment.
Oh, okay.
So if you don't understand, then we might as
It's
well
not a
just
thought
move on.
experiment. It's just something
You're
you do in
just
your
wrong,
mind, and
dude.
you're having a consideration.
Space-time is
It's
not
not
a
a thought
thought
experiment.
experiment.
Yeah.
Space-time is not a thought experiment. Just like green is not a
It's just
thought
an experiment in your
experiment.
thoughts. It's not a
an
thought experiment.
abstract that you're trying
Can it be a
to
physical experiment?
understand. Yes, I described it before. You measure like the bispinner, the vector, the scalar, the tensor, coupling constants. You measure how they couple to space-time, and then you make a prediction for how, based off those energy values, how will the object travel according to relativity. Then you do the experiment.
Yeah.
You, in the real world, let the object travel, right? And you see, does the path match what relativity predicted for the path, or is there another hypothesis that predicts that path better, that the object in reality followed that path based off that hypothesis and not relativity, right? So these aren't thought experiments. These are physical things we're doing with physical objects.
Yeah, but
Green
the
is not a
space-time,
thought experiment, just like space-time
hold
is not
on.
a thought
The
experiment.
space-time itself, though, is not part of the physical experiment. It's exclusively a part of the modeling in your mind. That's why it's thought experiment.
No, I told you before, it can be a
And then when
coordinate
the thought
system.
experiment is revealed and completed, then you do it in a test, and you simulate something in the real world. You already defined, like, that's the real world. That's where space-time does not exist. Because space-time is our mind, it's a thought experiment. We can use it to make predictions.
Jace, you interrupted him 4 times. You interrupted him 4 times. If you could please not do that. If he's going to respond, you said a lot. He should be able to respond uninterrupted, right?
Sure.
Right,
It's a
okay,
tensor valued. No, he's interrupting me. It's a tensor valued pseudo-Riemannian
No,
manifold, right?
sure.
That's
No,
its
you say sure.
physicality.
No,
Dude,
you
stop
say sure.
screaming over me.
I don't know, Fuzzy. Hold on a second, dude. I just temporarily muted you. Your mic's messed up, and he was speaking. But let Fuzzy go after you're done, Jace.
Yeah, right. So Arwen wants to put realness to what? Oh, holy shit, dude.
His connection is messed up. I'll leave him on mute until Fuzzy. You can hear me. Your mic's messed up. Jace is going to go on mute when he's done. You can respond. Go ahead.
Arwen wants to put reality to it, right? So the reality of what space-time really is, it's a tensor-valued pseudo-Riemannian manifold. And these have properties, like I was saying before, that can be measured and are measured physically in the real world. And then you use those measurements to make predictions about the outcomes of experiments. The kind of experiments I was giving before are examples of which way experiments, the path that a piece of matter is going to follow through the space-time, right? So if you don't know what a tensor-valued pseudo-Riemannian manifold is,
So
go
where
look it
exactly
up.
do you
That's
measure
what it is.
physically? You said you physically measured the space-time. Could you describe the process as you physically measure the space-time? Please proceed.
Tell you what, in a few minutes, I'm going to be back home. I'll go in the book that I was talking about earlier, and I'll get one of the experiments from the book where they're measuring these properties, and I'll give you all the details you could need about it. But just give me like 15, 20 minutes.
Can you go on mute until then? Can you go on mute until then?
Are you walking your dog right now?
No, that was earlier. I'm walking myself right now, but I'm going to be home in a few minutes, and I'm going to shower. Right, like things to do. But Arwen, like I said, all those things that you want to know, if you just look in that book, right, there's tons of experiments where they've measured these things. Like you just have to look for them.
Yeah,
but
Arwen,
if
come
you
on.
really need, I can, spell it all out for you. But I'm sure people will just talk over me and get all upset.
No,
Dude, you won't
said
shut up.
needed
You
a
just
book
said you do
to
when you got
give an
home. You still won't
example.
shut up. You just keep going.
I mean, you just told
'cause
us
you keep
very
bitching about
long-windedly
it.
how you
You
needed
just
a
repeated
book
yourself.
to
You
give
told
an
us you were gonna
example of measuring space-time. You don't now tell us that, oh, it's too difficult. We wouldn't
I didn't say
understand.
it's
No,
too difficult. I said I'm going to do you one better and get an exact experiment that's been done in all the details so you can do it yourself, bro.
you could also just, give a quick
But
summarized
in the
example.
meantime, can you just give us one off the top of your
Yeah.
head from the tons in the book? Can you just give us
Yes.
one off the top of your head from the book? Well, in the meantime, so we can think about that while we're
Well, so
waiting for you
like the Minkowski
to get
metric,
one from the
right?
specific book.
So the Minkowski metric, right, is the metric for flat space-time, which is like when the gravitation, there's a few conditions. The gravitational field isn't changing in time or is weakly changing in time. You're not dealing with like black holes, so it's not massive gravitation. You're not working with objects that are moving at the speed of light or like a huge portion of the speed of light, right? So when you do this, you can
What
measure...
physical objects are you working with? Well, what physical objects are you working with? Well, what physical? Because Arwen's asking for something physical, And so I'm asking, you're saying you're doing all these things. What physical things are you working with in this? What did you say? I forgot what it was. What was it?
You'd be working
He
with
said
matter.
he could
Holy
physically
shit.
measure space
All right.
time. I
I'll
want to
get the
know
book.
how.
I'll give you the examples because I do got to take off. But you're working with matter. Those are the physical objects, right? No one in science is claiming that space-time is some piece of matter that I can like show you. So we're not grabbing space-time and like moving it around and stuff. We're using matter to make measurements on space-time based off of how the matter would react based off of that space-time, right? And I'll get you the details because I got to go now because people are interrupting and didn't just let me tell you what this thing's
No,
for. But I'll
go
get into
So
the
we
ahead.
should
book.
Oh my
contend that you're
god,
not
dude. Fucking
physically
cry
measuring
me a
space
river.
time.
Write me a song on the world's most smallest violin. Shut up, dude. Be a grown man.
Adios. I'll catch you later, Arwen. I'll
Good.
get
Yeah.
those to you.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. It would be nice if you
Yeah.
just
That'd be great.
conceded that you're not physically measuring space time, like you said.
Cry me a river.
And to be clear from before, I'm sorry if I'm walking the dog and if my mic was bad. He literally, Geo said, Jace, you just interrupted Arwen 4 times, okay? And he said, yeah, okay. And then went on to continue to interrupt him and just continue speaking. And I was like, no, sorry, that's when you say okay and then stop talking. Sorry.
I don't think the guy is capable of actually having a conversation.
After years of evidence, I would say, yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. Guy's smart, but yeah, he's incapable of a conversation. He's definitely a monologuer. I mean that
Fa-
I came to that conclusion probably a year ago, actually.
Dude, but I've got to go home. I'm gonna get this book, and I'm gonna show you how a concept makes matter move and get bendy. Space time. I'll be right back, and I'll explain it to you. If you wouldn't have interrupted me, I could have explained it. Now I have to go.
Oh my god. That's perfect. Thank you
Yo,
for that.
that's actually really funny, Bear.